Hi, DeMarsha. You're about to watch my interview with Larry Johnson, the former CIA analyst, about the likelihood of war with Iran. But before the video starts, please take 2 seconds to hit like, follow, share down below. Also leave a comment. It helps us beat the YouTube algorithm that we're always trying to beat. And also go to trendsjournal.com. That's trendsjournal.com. And subscribe. It helps us stay 100% independent and deliver the world's best trend forecast that you will not get anywhere else. Go to trendsjournal.com right now after you hit like, follow, share. Have a great weekend. Hello, my name is Evan DeMarsh. I'm the executive editor of the Trends Journal. Today is February 27th, 2026. I'm happy to be joined with Larry Johnson, former CIA analyst and writer at sonar21.com. We'll have a link down below. Larry, thank you for joining the Trends Journal.
Yeah, I wish it was happier times and better. We could be talking about potato salad recipes.
that would be nice instead of worrying about. I check my X account all the time because I don't know if I'm going to see bombs are falling over Tehran or first wave of attacks. So, Larry, just before we went on, we talked about developments on Friday from the White House, Trump comments, what we've seen posted on X. Do you see us going to war with Iran? How close are we to
that? 24 to 48 hours, maybe 72. This is utter madness. Trump said at the State of the Union message that, he needed to hear Iran say, we don't ever want to build a nuclear weapon. Well, Iran has said that. They said that on Thursday. They've said it before. Trump can't take yes for an answer. And the reason is he is under the complete thumb, the domination of this Zionist AIPAC lobby. And it is, this is all about Israel and the lies that are being told about Iran. Blatant lies. They're continuously described as the #1 sponsor of terrorism in the world. Absolutely not true. And it's not my opinion. Those are the actual numbers that have been collected both by CIA and by a French think tank over the years. Both sides, independent information, both sides agree. So what we're seeing right now are the warning signs that an attack is imminent. Non-essential personnel from the U.S. Embassy in Iraq, they're being withdrawn. Britain is closing its embassy in Israel and pulling its citizens out of Iran. Kazakhstan withdrawing its personnel from Iran. So these are the kinds of movements that we'll know that an attack is imminent once we start seeing NOTAMs spring up. Notice to air missions, saying don't fly into Iran, don't fly into Israel. This will get kicked off, and unlike what happened on June 13th last year, I anticipate Iran's response will be immediate, forceful, and frankly, I think it will. The United States will find it overwhelming. It'll exceed our expectations, and the expectations that the U.S. has about the damage it can inflict on Iran, it will come up short. But this has the makings of expanded war that could really lead to a global conflagration. Because, at the heart of it, if you listen to the Iranians after yesterday's meeting in Geneva, they were fairly upbeat. Hey, we got some areas of agreement. We still got some areas of disagreement. We're going to get together on Monday to talk them out. And so I posted last night at Sonar 21 that, we got a confused picture, because the Iranians are generally talking upbeat about it. The American side, more hesitant, but still Witkoff and Kushner appeared to be coming out with a deal that would have allowed limitations on Iranian enrichment of uranium, but not complete elimination. And just as happened a year ago, April in 2025, when Witkoff had negotiated a deal that would have allowed Iran to continue to enrich, but at a much reduced level, he came back and announced that. And then within 24 hours, he'd gotten the hell beat out of him by the Zionist lobby, and he was now a complete 180.
I think he was on Fox. I think he was on Fox when he said Iran could upgraded, or they could enrich the uranium to 3.9%, and that was the same under the JCPOA, if I'm not mistaken, or
Right.
somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And then Netanyahu also came out after he made that comment, and he said, no, it has to be zero enrichment. And then the White House changed its tune, which is,
Yeah. So this is we're cocked and loaded. Apparently, they swept up all the poop off of the decks of the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier. People haven't been following that nightmare. You got a $16 billion aircraft carrier with a sanitation system that's like an outhouse in Arkansas. The whole sewage got plugged up. You know, the old sailing ships of the 19th century had a thing called the poop deck, and everybody always thought, oh, that's where the sailors went to poop. No, poop was le poop was a French word for deck. So there wasn't actually any defecation taking place. However, in this current $16 billion aircraft carrier, the people were standing in line upwards of 45 minutes just to relieve themselves. And some of the bathrooms were, the latrines, or the heads, as they're called in the Navy, were overflowing. And, it was a, literally a foul mess. So they went into port. Apparently they got some of that cleaned up, and they got some of the system fixed. But the crew on this aircraft carrier, they're not a happy lot. They've been pushed to the max. They're on an 8-month now deployment. Normally 6 months is more like it. But they've arrived off the coast of Israel. They're not going to attack Iran. Their job is to defend against inbound missiles and drones that Iran will fire at Israel once the attack starts. So, we're heading into some really dark waters. This is likely to kill any continued negotiations between the United States and Russia over the war in Ukraine. It's likely to touch off.
Why is that? Why would this kill? Why does this?
Because the lead negotiators for that is still Witkoff and Kushner, and they just demonstrated that their word is not worth anything. When they come out and say that there's still a basis for talking, and then within 24 hours Trump says nope, don't waste your time talking to Witkoff and Kushner. But this is the U.S. backing of this attack, or attacking Iran, is they're attacking an ally of Russia. They're attacking a country that Russia has signed a trilateral security agreement with. They're attacking a country that is a critical component of Russia's future economic plans with the North-South corridor. So this is going to, I think, sabotage any prospect for any kind of peaceful negotiation. And frankly, the United States hasn't shown any good faith in it. The right now talking about different ways to handle the sale of Rosneft, the Russian oil company, and the United States basically wants to confiscate, its assets. Russia is not going to put up with this. Name me one gesture, one conciliatory gesture that the United States has made to Russia. Just one.
Nothing. We're still sharing intelligence, reconnaissance, right? All this stuff with Russia. And also, I want to talk to you later on about the Flamingo missile, which is very interesting.
Sure.
I saw you mention that with Napolitano. But back to Iran. Earlier this week, the Washington Post came out, and I think the Wall Street Journal had an article too about Trump being told by top military officials that this is crazy, don't do this, or maybe not in those words, but we may not have enough weapons in the region, not enough troop support to take on Iran. At what point, Larry, should these officials, I mean, I know it sounds a little sanctimonious, but at what point could these officials come out and make a statement saying this is a bad idea, or they just won't do that because that'd be career suicide?
Well, what Kane should do is, if the order is given to go forward with this attack, he should tender his resignation, and accompanied by this is saying that this is an illegal order. The president of the United States is ordering us to go to war with Iran. Iran has not attacked us. And in any event, according to the Constitution, it must be the Congress that declares war, and then the president executes it. If the Congress declares war, then I'll follow orders. But until then, this is an illegal order. But they're not going to do that. And Trump, by his refusal to get congressional backing for this action, get him on the record with a vote, is setting himself up for being politically eviscerated. Because the odds that this is going to end favorably for the United States, very, very slim. And I say that for a number of reasons. One, we don't have major naval power there. We got one aircraft carrier. 8 months ago, we had 2 aircraft carriers in the Red Sea to stop the Houthis from interfering with freedom of navigation. 2 aircraft carriers, 5 destroyers, and after 7 weeks, we retreated. We capitulated. We claimed that the Houthis gave up, but that wasn't the case. That was a lie. And we had complete control of the air. Explain to me now how with one aircraft carrier, people say, well, what about the Ford? Well, the Ford's in the Mediterranean. It's not in a position to hit Iran with anything. It's too far away. It's there to provide defensive air cover for Israel when Iran starts firing ballistic missiles and drones at it. So that one aircraft carrier, the Ford, the Lincoln down in the Arabian Sea, it's got 3 destroyers with it. Those destroyers most likely are equipped, at least half of the missiles on board are Tomahawk cruise missiles. But the problem is they're keeping that carrier strike group about 1,700 to 1,000 miles offshore. The range of the cruise missile is only 1,000 miles. So if you're like 700 miles off, you're not going to go very deep inside Iran with that. And then the F-35s, again, they've got a 600-mile combat radius. So that means one of 2 things. Either they can fly out for 300 miles and then turn around and come back without being refueled, or they go out 600 miles and they have to be refueled. Refueling is a complicated operation, especially if you're in a combat zone.
Because these refueling planes are likely easy targets.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you might have the F-35. That might be stealth and effective, but how are you going to refuel it? But
then on top of it, I think one of the reasons that Kane and both and even Ratcliffe, the CIA director, were down, suggesting that this was going to be problematic. The Chinese reportedly have deployed a radar that's a 3-dimensional radar capable of detecting stealth aircraft, and its detection capabilities extend outward, so westward, for 430 miles. Well, they will then be able to detect all activity at the Prince Sultan Air Base, where a number of the U.S. aircraft, both tankers and F-35s, are based. And then they'll be able to see the Iranians will be able to see incoming waves of attacks, and they'll be able to adjust their response accordingly. This is not going to be like that surprise attack that took place on June 13th. And even then, when they got hit with a surprise attack that tried to decapitate senior clerical, political, and military leadership, within 10 hours, Iran was firing missiles into Israel. They know it's coming now. They may not wait to be hit. They'll wait, if they got notification that these flights are inbound, these attacks that they've launched Tomahawk cruise missiles. At that point, Iran then say, okay, we're under attack. Boom, let's launch.
Larry, I spoke to Professor Morandi, who I love to get his opinion on things, and he says most of Iran's capabilities are directed towards countries in the Gulf, right, if there's a major war. Can you explain to me how you think a war could unfold, how it would start? Because Politico had an article, I think it was the other night, maybe it was on Tuesday night, on how the plan could be that the IDF launches the first wave, and that would then force Iran to respond, and then likely Iran would target U.S. bases during that attack. And then that would be some kind of a casus belli to get the U.S. fully on board. Now they struck a base, dead troops potentially, and now we are fully involved. Do you see something like that? Do you think that's how it might unfold? A war might be the first wave with Israeli fighters.
It could be Israeli, or it could be us. I know we deployed 7 squadrons. A lot of them are Air National Guard forward. So in the U.S. Air Force, there are between 21 and 24 squadrons. Each squadron has 24 planes, F-35s. We've deployed a third of those to the region. So we've got a significant force. The problem with them is the aircraft have limited capability. They've never operated actually in a combat environment with let's call it peer-to-peer radar and air defense systems. This is going to be a test. We'll find out how effective the F-35 is or is not. Because even back in June, according to Alistair Crook, none of the Israeli aircraft ever made it into Iran proper. They launched air-to-ground missiles from outside the perimeter, and that caused some of the damage. But what Iran has with the standpoint of ballistic missiles and drones, they've got it if employed in a variety of. There are several tactical formations you could use that will simply overwhelm the U.S. ability to fight back. This is the problem. Let's say that Iran decides to attack the Prince Sultan Air Base, and we have Patriot missile batteries. Let's assume we've got 8 Patriot missile batteries deployed all along that perimeter. If there's one inbound missile, a Patriot battery will use two missiles to engage the one, sometimes 3 or 4, but let's just go with 2. What happens if Iran, we'll check out your math skills. If Iran launches 200 missiles and drones at that base, that means you're going to have to use about 400 Patriot missile to counter that threat. And let's say they're all perfect. It counters it, which is unlikely, but let's say that happens. So on that one attack, on that one day, they will have used up 400 Patriot missiles. Annual production is 700. So you've used up 60% of your total inventory in one day.
And it's not like this is something you can quickly produce each day and have 100 new ones coming out.
Yeah, no, that's just this. Like I said, this is the United States. They're gonna shoot their load real quick and won't be able to reload.
That's there was. I don't know if you saw this poll, Larry, but Gallup just released a new poll today, and it said, I'm going to read it right here. The favorable responses among Americans to the question, in the Middle East situation, who are you more sympathetic to, the Israelis or the Palestinians? For the first time ever, the Palestinians edged out the Israelis 41% to 36%.
Yeah.
And now that's today. Now, can you imagine what those numbers would look like if we do go to war with Iran and we're on some kind of even a blow for blow fight with Iran, how that would change?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be, let me put it, we're limited really to air power. We got limited firepower from the naval assets. And people say, well, how can you say that? Well, go back 8 months and look at what we tried to do in the Red Sea against the Houthis. And we failed. And at that time, we had twice the firepower with aircraft carriers. Now they've got them, they're divided. We said, well, we still got 2 aircraft carriers. Yeah, but the Gerald Ford, all it's going to do is launch air cover over Israel to try to shoot down incoming drones and missiles. That's what it's going to try to do. remains to be seen if they can do it. So this is we actually do not have a good example of the United States being able to operate in this kind of environment successfully. And so we're likely to get some planes shot down. We're likely to have some pilots captured. This is not. It's going to end up with a protracted struggle, except we've got limited ability to sustain firepower. We're going to run out of weapons, at both at sea and on land, with the air-launched air-to-ground missiles.
So with that threat, do you see the risk of either Israel or the U.S. going nuclear in Iran? Do you see that as a high probability or a high risk, Larry?
Well, they can launch a nuke. Sure, they may, but again, that's not going to save the day either. It's going to kill a lot of Iranians, and then it's going to engage the rest of the world: North Korea, Iran, China, and Russia. They're not going to stand by and let Israel just start using nukes on other countries. Turkey as well will be engaged, because already the Israelis are threatening Turkey, basically saying, once we get done with Iran, man, we're coming for you. How insane these Zionists can be, but they're such a bunch of arrogant pricks. Anybody that's ever dealt with them, they're despicable, and they're gonna, they're gonna create their own grave by their actions. The fact that they've now alienated such a large segment of the American population, that ain't going to get turned around.
I want to get your opinion on Mike Huckabee's recent comments, where he essentially comes out and he endorses a greater Israel. I mean, he said that he was taken out of context, but I could always say that I'm taken out of context and try to spin anything. Was he taken out of context, or do you think that was the position of the administration? Just
no, it was absolutely. Look, it was pure Zionism. The whole Zionist concept. And it's not confined to Judaism; it's in Christianity as well. This is all tied up with the eschatological doctrine, the doctrine of the end times. So they go back and say basically that God made this promise to Abraham, and notice when it make it to Abraham, well, you could say, is the father of both Jews and Muslims, but they've interpreted that the promise was only for the Jews, and that therefore the land from the Nile to the Euphrates, well, that encompasses Lebanon, Jordan, parts of Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. And he wasn't misinterpreted. He was just showing the stupidity of this ignorant religious belief. And the reaction in the region was immediate and swift. That again, Jordan and Saudi Arabia, who are hosting right now U.S. military planes that are going to attack Iran, they were outraged by it and spoke out. Again, with Egypt, Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, all the Gulf states, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Indonesia as well weighed in. So this was, this false belief that when you step back and look at the reality, you've got of the original 12 tribes of Israel, there are really only sort of 2 that may have survived and not been, incorporated into other cultures, and that those 2 got this full entitlement that this land is their land and the Palestinians have no right to it. It's obscene. It's a form of ethno supremacy doctrine, in the same way that Nazism had an ethno supremacist foundation. The Aryan race. Well, now here you get the Jewish race as supreme, and others are they've got Amalek, which are people that must be destroyed. So it is Huckabee really created a problem. He should have been fired. But it just goes to show Donald Trump is under the control of the Zionist lobby. And if we attack Iran, that's going to be done on behalf of Israel, not on behalf of the interests of the United States of America.
I want to move over to the flamingo, and I know you're in Florida, but not the bird.
Yeah.
There's a missile in Ukraine, and I did a report on it for our Substack page. And what's interesting about this weapon, do you know who sits on the board for the Ukrainian company? Larry, you'll never guess the former Secretary of State who's on the Ukrainian company's board who produces it.
Oh, Pompeo?
Pompeo. He's a board member of this company in Ukraine.
Yeah.
That it's first of all, I want to hear your opinion about the development of this weapon. Looks like it's right from this company that has ties to the UK. But whether or not, of course, Ukraine says that it's their product, it's their production, and shows that they're viable against Russia. Can you talk to me about the flamingo and what it means and how that escalates or potentially escalates the war between Ukraine and Russia?
Well, it's not so much going to escalate it between Ukraine and Russia, but between Russia and the UK and the rest of NATO. The other day, I think they fired 6 of those and only 1 got through. We were talking beforehand that maybe they've launched another series of them, but Russia's demonstrated the capability to defeat these, and these aren't game-changing missiles. What they are, though, is they symbolize the increased involvement of NATO in this war, making NATO a more likely target at some point for Russia. That Russia will turn around and say, okay, you're attacking us, and we're going to attack you. We'll attack and destroy the headquarters of the folks that own the Flamingo or that put it together. I understand Denmark as well was implicated in this, but it doesn't change the outcome of this war. The Ukraine is defeated. But it's like a chicken. If you've ever been around a farm where they cut a chicken's head off, the chicken can still run around without a head until it finally bleeds out and falls over. We're at that stage with Ukraine. Ukraine's in the run around and bleed out stage.
So Larry, overall, what do you see as a bigger risk to the United States? Obviously, I would imagine you would say Iran, war with Iran right now. That's the more looming issue. Would you say that's accurate?
Well, yeah, militarily, that's the biggest risk right now because the Iranians are equipped to inflict some significant damage on us. And let's say if they sink a ship, a destroyer, or worst of all, if they manage to sink either the Ford the Lincoln, it's gonna have repercussions. There will be demands to declare war on Iran and try to put the United States onto a war footing that economically is going to destroy us. Because as we're talking about all of this, we've got this chaos that's taking place in the commodities markets, particularly with gold and silver. That basically there's demand out there for silver delivery that there's not enough physical metal to make the delivery. And that's why we're seeing, the price of silver, price of gold climb. And it started today. They broke through again the 90 level on silver. So
I didn't see that. Wow, $90 an ounce for silver. Yeah. Incredible. And plus, wow.
It was, in fact, it was worse than that. It was, hang on here. I can tell you, it's $93 right now.
I didn't see that, man.
And gold's at $250, $5,250.
Well, the Trends Journal was all over gold. Gerald called it back in 2024 that it was going to be, gold was going to rise because of bad leadership, mainly, and getting us into troubles.
So when this war gets started, it's going to roil the commodities markets. Oil, Brent futures are going to soar, and so it's going to create both an inflationary shock on the global economy, as well as a deflationary shock. I mean, it's going to be a twofer.
Do you trust Raising Cane? Do you know enough about him to say whether one way or the other, if you trust him or not? Are we in reasonably good hands with him? Or
No, we're not. I don't trust him at all. I don't trust anybody in the Clinton administration, in the Trump administration. When we got a clown like Pete Hegseth, quote, Secretary of War, you don't have anybody with the maturity and experience to stand up to the president and say, Mr. President, we cannot go down this road. We don't. What is the objective? What's the objective? If we're going to use military force, when we're done using it, what's the outcome? That we bloody the nose of Iran and piss them off so that they want to carry out more attacks on us?
Larry, you might not have an answer for this, but if you had to, if someone said you must, you're the president, you get to choose Pete Hegseth for Secretary of State, or I'm sorry, Secretary of War, or Lloyd Austin, who would you choose if you had to choose one of them?
Oh man, that's like asking, would you rather have ass cancer or prostate cancer?
Yeah, okay, all right. I guess we could.
I would go with someone like Doug McGregor.
Doug McGregor.
Bring in somebody that's got some wisdom and understands that, just because we think everything looks like a nail, we don't have to hit it with a hammer. The reality, we constantly portray Iran falsely as the number one sponsor of terrorism. And the statistics show beyond any doubt that over 80% of the terrorist acts over the last 36 years have been carried out by radical Sunni extremists. And these people have been funded by Saudis, Qataris, Emiratis, Kuwaitis, Pakistanis to some extent. So it's not Iran. And yet here we are making this up as a justification to attack Iran. And it is going. I think this will end up being catastrophic for our country. And those who hate Trump, they'll be happy because this will destroy Trump in his presidency.
Last point, Larry, before I let you go, and I appreciate you joining, Larry Johnson. I'll have all your links down below. It's amazing. The conversation that we just had, you will never see in the mainstream news media. It's remarkable. If you watch that, it's how weak Iran is, how the Iranians want the U.S. to intervene. And that is all you get. It's really remarkable. The other side is absolutely, it's completely avoided.
Yeah, we keep talking about like we're the victims here, that Iran has continued to attack us. Well, when you step back and look at the facts, the original reason that students took over the U.S. Embassy back in 1979 and held American diplomats hostage was because the United States provided protection for the Shah, who is responsible for the actual deaths of more than 30,000 Iranians. And then starting in 1980, the United States encourages Saddam Hussein to launch a war against Iraq. And then we meet you got pictures of Don Rumsfeld there, glad-hatting with Saddam Hussein. And we provided the chemical precursors that were used to create chemical weapons that were used against Iranian troops, killing at least 250,000. It's probably closer to 400,000. Iran has the total number of Americans estimated to have been killed, and it's military personnel primarily, killed through proxies, Shia proxies in Iraq. That number is less than 1,000. Okay? Compare 1,000 with 500 or 400,000. And then we wonder why they chant death to America. Well, we've caused so much death and destruction in Iran, and I haven't even begun to add up the actual terrorist attacks. We've taken a group, the Mujahideen al-Khalq, who was on the foreign terrorist organization list by the State Department starting in 1997. But 15 years later, it's taken off. During the Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton administration, they removed it from the list. Why? Because the CIA was using it, paying it, training it to carry out attacks inside Iran. We're the sponsor of terrorism, not them.
On that note, Larry Johnson, Sonark 21, thank you for joining the Trends Journal. As always, Larry, stay well.
All right, Ed, thanks.